Of 1857. So revolt of 1857, we have divided it into two parts. So first, now in this lesson we are going to study about the first part. So let's start. So in this first part, we will see about the background of the revolt of 1857, then what are the political causes for the revolt of 1857, then the administrative causes, then economic causes, then social and religious causes, and then military causes. Okay, so first let's start with the background of revolt of 1857. So the revolt of 1857 was though a regional manifestation, yet the causes and the events that instigated the revolt were surely having a pan-Indian characteristic. That means though the reasons were regional, but it had a pan-India characteristic. So the revolt of 1857 was the outburst of people's feeling against social, economic and political exploitation, and hence people participated from almost every field, that is social, economical, represented by peasants, and political, that is deposed rulers in the revolt. So almost from every field people participated in the revolt of 1857. So it was the first major attempt by the Indians to free themselves from the clutches of British Raj. But Anglo-Indian historians have greatly emphasized the importance of military grievances and greased cartridges affair as the most potent cause which led to the uprising of 1857. That means that looking towards the revolt of 1857, there are various perspectives, and some people say that like for example Savarkar, Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, VD Savarkar, okay. VD Savarkar, he says that revolt of 1857 was the first war of independence. First war of independence. But for the the Anglo-Indian historians or the European historians, they say that revolt of 1857 was not the first war of independence, but it was just a revolt by, or a mutiny by, the soldiers against their officers for the grievances, the military grievances which were not addressed by the military officers, and mainly the greased cartridges affair, which we are going to study about that. So this led to the revolt of 1857. This view is given by the Anglo-Indian historian or the European historians, but the nationalistic historians, they say that this was not just a revolt or a mutiny, but it was a war or a first attempt to overthrow the British power in India. Okay. So the greased cartridges and the mutiny of soldiers was merely the matchstick which exploded the inflammable material which had gathered in heap on account of variety of causes, that is political, social, religious and economic. So the mutiny of soldiers, the grist cartridges and the mutiny of soldiers, this was just a excuse, or this was just an immediate cause, but the grievances or the anger had piled up against British Empire, and they just needed an excuse, and the excuse was given by the greased cartridges affair and the mutiny of soldiers. And but it had this greased cartridges and the mutiny of soldiers, this was just an immediate cause, but it had a background of a political, social, religious and economic background or economic causes. So prior to this revolt also, the resentment of the Indians were expressed in both violent mutinies as well as a peaceful protest. So before this 1857 revolt also there were small mutinies. Sometimes they were violent mutinies, sometimes there were silent protests also. So the mutiny at Vellore in 1806, at Barakpur 1824, at Firozpur 1842, sorry, and the mutiny of the 7th Bengal Cavalry, and mutiny of 22nd Northern Infantry and in 1849, and the revolt of Santhals in 1855-56, all the coal uprising in 1831-32. So these are the examples which were before the revolt of 1857. Okay, so etc. This were the prior mutinies or the revolts or the protest against the exploitative nature of the British Empire in India. So these are some examples, and this had gathered the anger against British Empire. So these were etc. were among the high degree of protest by the people that culminated in the revolt of 1857. So the mutiny of Vellore, Barakpur, Firozpur, and the mutiny of 7th Bengal. So this was a high degree of protest by the people that culminated into the revolt of 1857. So 1857 revolt was the final result of the anger which outbursted in a great revolt. So what were the political causes of the revolt of 1857? So the conquest was one of the main reason, one of the main political cause behind the revolt of 1857. What was this? So the East India Company created a lot of discontent and disaffection among the dispossessed ruling families and their successors by her conquest. A large number of dependents on the ruling families who lost their means of livelihood, and other common people were disillusioned and disaffected with the alien rule. So when East India Company started to expand herself in India, and that time it it conquered lot of the native rulers, and when these native rulers were conquered, that time lot of people who were dependent on these native rulers, they lost their livelihood. So this was also one of the main reason. So Lord Dalhousie annexed the Punjab and added humiliation to the ruling family. So when the native rulers were conquered, it was a humiliation for them. And similarly, Punjab was also one of the ruling family which was conquered, and it added humiliation to that ruling family. So mainly the ruling families were humiliated, and they were not happy with the policies adopted by English East India Company. So they were also looking for just a chance to take the revenge from English East India Company. So Dilip Singh, the minor son of Ranjit Singh, the founder of the Sikh kingdom of the Punjab, was deposed and exiled to England. So the properties of the Lahore Darbar were auctioned. So this was a great humiliation for the ruler of Punjab. Then again, the doctrine of lapse. So by applying the doctrine of lapse, Dalhousie annexed the principalities of Satara, then Jaipur, then Sambalpur, then Bhagat, then Udaipur, then Jhansi and Nagpur. So the doctrine of lapse means that if you don't have a rightful heir, that means you don't have a son, then the kingdom will go to the English East India Company. That means there will be, if you don't have any son, or if you don't have any heir to your throne, that means that kingdom will go directly into the British Empire. So this was the doctrine of lapse, which was introduced by Dalhousie in India. So doctrine of lapse manifested the lack of sensitivity of British towards the ancient right of adoption amongst the Hindus. That means if you don't have a rightful son, or if you don't have your own son, you can adopt your son and make him the king of your empire. But this was not allowed by the doctrine of lapse. That means you cannot, if you don't have a rightful son, that means you cannot adopt a son and make him a king. If you don't have a rightful son, you will have to surrender your kingdom to the English East India Company. So this was the policy of doctrine of lapse, which was introduced by Dalhousie. Okay, so Lord Dalhousie annexed the kingdom of Awadh in 1856 on the pretext of mismanagement. So this is important. You should remember this, that kingdom of Awadh was annexed on the pretext of mismanagement. Dalhousie said that there is mismanagement in your administration and you are not able to administer your kingdom, and that's why the kingdom of Awadh was annexed by Lord Dalhousie. So the dethronement of Wajid Ali Shah sent a wave of resentment and anger throughout the country. Wajid Ali Shah was dethroned, and this sent anger throughout the country. Next, the humiliation of the Mughals. Then, since 1803, the Mughal emperors had been living under the British protection, and his claims to honor and precedence were recognized. Amherst made it clear to the emperor that his kingship was nominal, and it was merely out of courtesy that he was addressed as king. Now, Mughal emperor was a nominal king, and Lord Amherst, he said that it is out of courtesy that he is addressed as king, but he is not a real king now. So the emperor was forced to give up residence in the Red Fort and abandon his prerogative of naming his successor. Later on, he was forced to leave the Red Fort, which was his ancestral residence, where all the Mughal rulers lived in this Red Fort. So he was forced to leave the Red Fort, and also his prerogative to name the successor. So the treatment meted out by the governor generals to the Mughal emperor greatly alienated the Muslims, who felt that the British wanted to humble their emperor. So the mistreatment which was given to the Mughal emperor was also one of the political cause which resulted into the revolt of 1857. Then suspension of pension. So the annual pension of Rani Jindan, okay, the queen of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, Rani Jindan, the queen of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, was reduced from 15,000 pounds to 1,200 pounds. That means 1,200 pounds. So the pension of Nana Sahib and of Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi was suspended. Then the titular sovereignty of the Nawab of Carnatic and Tanjore was also abolished. So this the suspension of pension was also one of the reason which resulted into the revolt of 1857. Then rule of law. This is also one. This comes under the administrative causes. So rule of law, when English East India Company came to India, at that time, before English East India Company, there was something different administrative measure, but when English East India Company came to India, it introduced a different administrative system in India, which was very new to Indians, and Indians had no knowledge about that. So the British introduced the rule of law, which implied the principle of equality in the eyes of the law, irrespective of the high and the low, the rich and the poor, the weak and the strong. So when English East India Company came to India, that time it introduced a rule of law in which said that there is equality before law. That means equality in the eyes of the law, irrespective of high and low, rich and poor, and the weak and the strong. So the poorer and the weaker sections did not get any benefit from the new system due to complicated procedure of the British administration. So these laws which were introduced by English East India Company, these were complicated laws, and it was very difficult to comprehend for a common man, and mainly the weaker section. So the rule of law was not very much useful for the common people. So this also added anger against the British Empire. Then unpopular British administration. So the English officials were not accessible to the people. Thus, the people could not place their grievances for them as they did during the period of the Mughals. So during the Mughal period, or during the Rajas who were ruling the native kingdoms, people could go and people could go and place their grievances in front of the ruler. But when English East India Company took over, that time English officials were not accessible to the people. They cut off themselves from the mainstream, unlike their earlier, unlike their the Indian counterparts. So the people also disliked the new system of British administration, which functioned as a machine and lacked personal touch. So the new system which was introduced, the new administration system which was introduced by English East India Company, that was also not liked by the Indian people. So the English laws were quite strange and the common people could not understand them. So the process of making laws and all these things were very new to Indian people, and Indian people lacked knowledge about these laws, and these laws were very complicated, as we have discussed earlier. The laws were very complicated and it was very difficult to comprehend these laws. So that's why people also not like this the new law system, the new administrative system. So that's why it added anger against the British Empire. Then exclusion of Indians from administrative posts. So this was also one of the reason, the one of the administrative cause. So the British were of the opinion that the Indians were not suitable for the higher posts in their administrative structure. They lacked faith in the sincerity of Indians. They say that actual first thing was they did not have the English thought that the Indians are not suitable for the higher post in the administrative structure, and secondly they also did not have faith in Indians, and they contempt for Indian and racial prejudice were other reasons why the Indians were denied higher positions in the administration. So they had their prejudices and they said that the black people or the brown people, which is the Indian people, that means the brown people are inferior to them and they are not that much capable, and that's why they excluded Indians from the administrative posts. So complete exclusion of Indians from all position of trust and power in the administration, and the manning of all higher offices both in the civil government and the military forces by the British brought forth discontent and a sense of humiliation among the people. That means that Indians were excluded from both the civilian post, the civilian higher post and the military higher post. Indians were excluded from both, and this brought forth the discontent and a sense of humiliation among the people, because Indian people started to think that these are the foreigner people and they are excluding us from the ruling positions, the higher positions, because they are thinking that we are inferior to them, and this brought forth the discontent among the people. Then the economic causes are also very important. So try to remember what are the economic causes, what are the administrative causes, because this may be a question in our exam, and they may ask you what are the economic or the reason, what are the economic or the administrative causes behind the revolt of 1857. So try to memorize this thing. You can pause the lesson and write it down in your copy. Okay, so now let's see the economic causes. What are the economic causes? So the ruin of the mercantile class. So the British deliberately crippled Indian trade and commerce by imposing high tariff duties against Indian goods. On the other hand, they encouraged the import of British goods to India. That means they made India just a market and they excluded Indian exports and made India as a importing country. And because whatever goods were manufactured in India, they levied a lot of heavy taxes on them, so that it is difficult for Indian goods to find a market in foreign countries. So as a result, by the middle of the 19th century, Indian exports of cotton and silk goods practically came to an end. So here you can see the ships which are carrying English goods. They are coming to India, bringing foreign goods, and they are trading in India, and India just became a new market for English goods. So then the destruction of Indian manufacturers. The British policy of promoting the import of cotton goods to India from England destructed all Indian manufacturers in the cotton textile industry. So we see that previously the cotton textile industry was very important industry in India, and lot of exports was going on, and India was a leading exporter in this field. But when English took over, and they replaced this policy, and they started to import English goods in India, English textile goods in India, and this was a big blow to the Indian cotton textile industry. So when British goods flooded Indian market and threatened the outright destruction of Indian manufacturers, the East India Company's government that ruled India did not take any step to prevent the tragedy. So they, openly promoted English goods in India. They openly promoted the English textile goods in India, and that brought a big blow to Indian textile industry. So free trade and refusal to impose protective duties against the machine made goods of England ruined Indian manufacturers. So we see that during this time, the industrial revolution was taking place in Europe, and new machineries were invented, and machineries in the field of textile also were invented, and new cloth which was made from the which was made on the power looms. The machine made cotton was coming in India, which was very cheap, and the English were, promoting that cheap cotton textiles in India, and it was finding a good market in India. And uh, from this, the Indian textile industry suffered a lot. So the pressure on land also increased. So when the English East India Company promoted the foreign goods in India, the textiles in India, it was a big blow to the artisans which were involved in the manufacture of cotton goods. So when these people did not find market in India for their products, for their cotton goods, they had to leave their profession, because the cotton producing profession, the textile profession was not profitable for them, because their cloth had no market in India. So they had to leave their profession and go to their agriculture. They had to go to the they had to choose a new profession. The profession was agriculture. So the new wave was coming, which were artisans. The artisans were coming towards agriculture, and when they were coming to agriculture, this increased a pressure on the land. So the millions of ruined artisans and craftsmen, the spinners, the weavers, the smelters, the smiths, and others from town and villages had no alternative but to pursue agricultural activity. That led to a pressure on land, because now these artisans, the spinners, weavers, the smelters, the smiths, they were losing their jobs in towns, because their products were replaced by the European products. So they were losing their jobs, and that's why they were coming towards agriculture, and this way the pressure on land increased. So India was transformed from being a country of agriculture into a agricultural colony of British Empire. So now India became a agricultural colony of British Empire. So impoverishment of a peasantry. So this was also, So we see that drastic changes were taking place in agricultural field also. The land being the chief source of income for Indians, the East India Company introduced various experiments and measures to extract maximum share of agricultural produce. Various methods of revenue settlement led to the impoverishment and misery of the peasants. So the English East India Company introduced a new type of taxation system in India, like Mahalwari system or the Royatwari system. So this type of system were mainly for the extraction of a huge amount of taxes from the peasants. So peasants were exploited by moneylenders who usually confiscated their land for failure to repay their debt. So the peasants fell into this debt cycle, and this caused the impoverishment of the peasantry, and the situation of peasant became very bad, and he was not even able to fulfill his basic needs. He was not even getting to eat properly. English settlers monopolized plantation industries like indigo and tea. So this is very important. The plantation of indigo and tea. So when the peasant had to plant indigo, after some time the cultivable land, the fertile land became barren, and it was not good for cultivation anymore. So that's why it was ruining the quality of land also. So English settlers monopolized the plantation industries like indigo and tea, and the inhuman treatment of the indigo cultivators by the European plantation owners was one of the darkest and the most tragic episodes in the history of British rule in India. The Indian plantation workers were also not treated properly by the Europeans, mainly the English East India Company. The economic policies of the British affected the interest of the Indian traders, the manufacturers, the craftsmen, and the peasants. So we see that not only the traders but the manufacturers, the craftsmen, and the peasants all were affected by the economic policy which was adopted by English East India Company. Now the social and religious causes are also very important for the revolt of 1857. These are very important reasons which resulted into the revolt of 1857. So the social legislation. So when English came to India, they saw that this is a different type of society which they had in Europe. So Lord William Bentinck abolished the practice of sati in 1829 with the support of educated and enlightened Indians such as Raja Ram Mohan Roy. And Lord Canning enacted the Widow Remarriage Act drafted by Lord Dalhousie in 1856. This legislation were viewed by the orthodox sections in the society as interference by the British in their social and religious practice. So we see that there were different types of systems in India, different types of practices in India, mainly the social and religious practices like the practice of sati. So which was quite inhuman. When English came to India, they saw that this is inhuman to burn a woman who is alive with her husband who is dead. So burning a live woman with the dead husband. So this was very inhuman. So for this, Lord William Bentinck brought a law and abolished this system of sati. Then widows were not allowed to remarry in India. So at that time, Lord Canning enacted this Widow Remarriage Act, and widows were allowed to remarry. And this was not liked by the orthodox section of the Indian society, and they saw this as the interference by the foreigners into the social and religious matters of Indians. So this was also one of the main reason for the revolt of 1857, mainly the social and religious reason. Then the missionary activities. there was a strong movement grew in England to spread Christianity in India and convert its Hindus and Muslim subjects to that faith. So a lot of missionary activity was going on from England, and a lot of missionaries came from England to India to convert Indian Hindus and Muslims into Christianity. So by the Charter Act of 1813, Christian missionaries were permitted to enter the company's territories in India to propagate their religion and spread Western education. So it was directly by the law that Christian missionaries were allowed to come to India and propagate their faith. So the Christian missionaries took every opportunity to expose the abuses in the Hindu as well as the Islamic religion. So Christian missionaries started to expose the abuses which were done by the Hindu as well as Islamic religion. So they denounced idolatry, they ridiculed the Hindu gods and goddesses, and criticized the philosophy and principles of Hinduism and Islam. And the teaching of Christian doctrines were made compulsory in educational institutes run by the missionaries. So this was also one important thing, that when English started schools for education, so the Christian doctrines were made compulsory in schools which were run by the government, so that there will be a Christian influence on the students who are educated in the government schools. So thus the interference of the British authorities in social customs and practices through social legislation and the encouragement given by the government to Christian missionaries in their proselytizing activities created a sense of apprehension and hatred in the minds of Indians. So Indians did not like this thing. They saw that the government is taking a proactive step to convert Indians into Christianity. So Indians they did not like this thing, that the government is promoting conversion of Hindus and Muslims to Christianity. So this was seen as a threat to their religion, or to as a threat to their faith. So this was also one of the important social and religious reason for the revolt of 1857, that is the missionary activities. Then the very important thing was the military causes. So the service conditions of the military personnel. So the sepoys of Bengal army were Brahmins mainly, and Rajputs had a special grievances of their own. So among them were unsatisfactory conditions of service, like encroachment upon their religious customs and offenses against their dignity and self-respect. So there a lot of things were there which were against their social and religious customs. So those who were serving in the military, there were a lot of things which they could not practice while serving in the military. So they had a strong sense of resentment, as their scale of salary was very low compared to their English counterparts. See, English soldier and Indian soldier both were fighting on the same battlefield, but the salary paid to the Indian soldier was very less when it was compared to its English counterpart. So this was also one of the reason that the Indian soldiers were not treated properly, and they were seen as inferior, and they were not given better salaries or equal salaries as compared to their English counterpart. And the social practices which the Indian soldiers followed, that was not allowed to them while serving in the military. So this was also one of the important reason. So here you can see the Indian soldiers in the English army. So in the guise of enforcing discipline, the British authorities prohibited the Hindus and the Muslim sepoys displaying their religious marks. So they were not allowed to show their religious marks. Mainly the Hindu Sipais were forbidden to wear vermilion mark on their forehead or turban on their head. So we see that when the earlier time, mainly the Hindus were they had to have this vermilion mark or the tilak. So they had this tilak on their forehead. So they were not allowed to apply this tilak on their forehead or to wear the turban on their head. So this was seen by the Indian soldiers as the interference in their religious matters, and the Muslim sepoys were forced to shave off their beard. So Muslim used to keep their beard. Now we see that a lot of Muslims, they have the grown beard. So at that time Muslims were not allowed to keep the beard, and they were forced to shave off their beard while serving in the military, and these restrictions wounded the religious sentiments of the sepoys. Then one important thing came while the military grievances were going on, and that was the General Service Enlistment Act. So this General Service Enlistment Act was very important. Remember this, what is the meaning of this General Service Enlistment Act? There was a question on this thing, on the General Service Enlistment Act. What was the General Service Enlistment Act? Okay, so it was very simple. So the Hindu soldiers nursed grievances against the British as they were forced to go on expedition to Burma and Afghanistan, which violated their religious beliefs. To live among Muslims and to take food and water from them was disliked to their ancient customs. See, it was a tradition in India that you should not cross the sea, or you should not go to a foreign land. If you cross the sea, or if you go to foreign land, then you will lose your caste. Lose your caste. If you go to foreign lands. So when you go to foreign, you will lose your caste identity. So this was one important. And the General Service Enlistment Act, it made it compulsory to Indian soldiers that you should give it in written that you will serve wherever you are called upon to do so. So if the company asks you to go to foreign country, you will have to go. Okay. So the crossing the seas was prohibited by the religion, as one who crossed the forbidden seas was bound to lose his caste. So we have seen that those who crossed the sea, they lost their caste. So this was also one belief which was followed by Indians. So in order to prevent any kind of resistance from the sepoys against their deployment abroad, Lord Canning's government passed the General Service Enlistment Act in 1856. So this, according to this General Service Enlistment Act, you will have to give in written that you will serve anywhere. If you asked to serve abroad also, then also you will go. So this was this was a prayer condition in General Service Enlistment Act. This was undertaken from any soldier that he will go and serve in abroad. So by this act, all future recruits to the Bengal army were required to give an undertaking that they would serve anywhere where their services required. Okay, so these were some of the causes for the revolt of 1857, which resulted into the Great Revolt of 1857. Also, you can call it as first war of independence. So, in our next lesson, we are going to study we will continue this part of the revolt of 1857. So, in the next part, we will see how was the revolt of 1857, where it took place and how it ended. Okay.